Neil from Essex here, out to have you join me along with another step on my honey-do list.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
Earlier this year, we did a couple of videos of me putting in a lawn at a house that I just moved to. I had to take what was essentially an open field and go through, smooth out the soil, remove the rocks, hydro seed down a lawn, fertilize everything, and get it ready to go. Made it for a nice set of videos. What you don't see though often is what happens months and months after that. We did that at the end of June, which is not exactly the best time of year for putting down a new lawn. Two things happened in the months since then. Some areas of that grass didn't germinate super well, to the point that weeds were able to come up and fill the area in. I got a lot of weeds in my grass, which is not too surprising for a new lawn like this. I since went through and sprayed a whole bunch of them off, and I'm kind of at the point now that I'm ready to come out and overseed and put some seed back down again. So I'm gonna be doing that here shortly. Another thing though that happened was, because this is new construction, I have a new sand mound put in that really was soft, and as that soil settled out, things got really rough and stuff. When I ran across there with my zero-turn mower, it felt like it was gonna knock my teeth out as I'm running across some of those bumps. Another thing that happened too is I was going out and seeding with my seeder. Some of the areas where new soils had been put in weren't compacted to the point that I could drive that heavy tractor across those areas without putting ruts in. So I can see when I look across some of these areas the exact path that that tractor took as it put seed down. So in order to correct some of that today, I'm gonna go do some overseeding, which is not the point of this video, but today we're gonna be out running the SCL with this Harley Rake here on the front. The Harley Rake is the implement that we're gonna look at, and it's the one that we're going to use in order to take some of the bumps and stuff out of the lawn here so that I can mow across it smoothly. There's a huge variety of soil prep tools out in the industry. We mainly deal in two of them, the FFC Preparator or the Harley Rake. These are not competitors with one another. They're actually both owned by the same parent company called Paladin. They've kind of scooped up a lot of these industry companies over the years. There's a lot of technology in these brands here at this point. There's some significant differences between those two implements. I did a lot of my initial work out here using that Preparator. Predominantly, it's what we do the most in rental fleets because it's a very easy machine to put on the front of your skid steer. You drop it on the front of the machine and basically drive backwards, and it's gonna work that top layer of soil and pick the rocks out as it goes. It did a really nice job out here. Today we're going to be using the Harley Rake, and this is kind of the other alternative. A Harley Rake is generally going to be a little bit more aggressive than a Preparator is going to, and that's why I'm choosing it here today. I need to be able to work that top layer of soil in order to get out these ruts and stuff that have developed here in my yard, so I'd like a little bit more aggressive implement to do that. What makes this more aggressive is this spinning drum here on the front, so you can think of this a little bit as a specialized rototiller almost. This thing is going to sit here and spin. These carbide nubs that are on here are going to work that top layer of soil, and it's going to leave you a kind of pattern after it's done where you have some holes and stuff in that finished soil where the seed and stuff can collect. Now I'm going to drill the seed down later with a slit seeder. It's going to make sure I have good seed to soil contact, but this is something that you'll sometimes see people broadcast and stuff over top of later because of that pattern and stuff that's left behind. Now we'll show you in a little bit here the art to running this thing. There is an art to kind of sculpting things with this as you go, but there's a couple of basics here that you should understand that kind of helps inform you how to run this implement. For the most part, you're usually going to see these with wheels on the front. They're kind of going to act as your depth gauge. By rolling what will be your bucket function front and back, you're going to change how deep this thing rides in the ground. Generally, I'm going to go set those on the ground, throw the loader in the float, and then just usually, for me, drive in reverse. Now this thing can work in either forward or reverse. In reverse, it's going to kick things towards you usually. Driving forward, you're going to want to kick things in front of you. And you're going to determine that direction based upon the direction that you run your hydraulics. This drum is fully bi-directional. I have this thing set up to run straight. You can also pull a pin right here and angle it left to right. If you're going through and you're doing a new lawn, a new seeding for the new lawn, generally you're gonna angle this thing, and as you drive along, you're gonna have it kick all of your rocks and stuff to the side into a bit of a windrow. I'm not doing that here today. I'm just basically running the thing in forward. While this is bi-directional, as you're going along, you can pull some soils and stuff along with you to drop into those low spots. That's generally done with a set of plates that are over here on the side. Those plates can be flipped between being on the front and the back of the implement to vary the direction that you're going. So this first area that we're going to do right here is an area that my stormwater management had to be reworked. I can complain to you about stormwater management for a solid hour. That's not as interesting as what this thing is. This is soil that was dumped here and then really got compacted. Now I'm going to come back and reseed this area, but the Harley Rake is going to take that top layer of dirt and work it up and get it ready for seed. So what I'm going to do here is turn my hydraulics on, rev my machine up. I'm going to set this up to run backwards. So we're going to throw it into float and drop it down on the ground. And I said we could roll this back and forth in order to set our level, set our depth. So I'm going to set my catch plates as being just off the ground and then run this in the reverse direction. Now as I back up, it's going to dig up that soil. The catch plates there are going to pull it along. Now I got a good line of sight down to where those catch plates are at there. And as I see too much soil accumulate or not enough, I can just use my right hand control here to change what would be my bucket angle in order to set that thing deeper or more shallow. Now you can see there I get a beautiful, perfectly smooth finish as I back up. So now you take a look at my finish down here as I backed up. This is one of the big distinctions between a preparator and a Harley Rake. As I backed up here, this thing kicked all of the stones along, and at the end of my pass, I'm left with all the rocks and everything here that were in the yard. That's great because it's put them in one spot to clean up, but I need to take a manual step now in order to deal with these. That's one place that I like the preparator a little bit better, because it has the bucket on the back side of it. As you're using that implement, it's attempting to kick the rocks back into the bucket, where you then can drive the machine out to a place and dump a pile of soil that's gonna be mostly rocks there when you're finished. So I take this thing then at the end and do another pass in order to drag all this stuff off and get it out of the way, so it's knocking those rocks forward as you go. That is part of the reason when you're doing a wide open space to angle the thing sideways. That way, as the drum hits the rocks, it will windrow them, and then every pass that you do, you just continue to kick them over. So now as I was backing up, I had that drum spinning towards me. Now I'm gonna take my pile of rocks here and push them off. So now I'm gonna run the drum forward. Since this is bi-directional now, I can come down here to my spoils pile and just continue to kick it forward and push it off to the side. I find it a lot harder to run this direction because I don't have the same sense of depth. I can listen to the engine and stuff, but I can't see the drum working as well as when I'm running in reverse. Now you can pick these things up for any number of different kinds of equipment. You can run them on skid steers and track loaders frequently. They sell 3-point hitch mounted versions. I like it on the SCL here a lot because with my hands resting right on top of the controls, I have a really nice, almost like skid steer pilot control kind of movement. And because I'm standing here over top of it, I can see it really well. You know, larger sizes are nice. If you're going to be finishing the entire lawn, you might want something bigger than this. It would make getting level and stuff a little bit easier having one that's 6 feet wide instead of 3 feet. But this thing's nice to use. The little stand-on loader is a great carrier for this kind of implement. Behind me here is another place that I've been doing some work. So after everything here had settled out, I've got a couple places now that I'm developing some ponds and stuff, some pooling in my yard after a rain. So I took my tractor and dumped a little bit of dirt over here, and I'm going to use this in order to spread everything out. Now the one trouble that I've had here, the one condition that's kind of important to keep in mind, is that this thing works much, much better with dry soil than it does with wet, lumpy stuff. So what I dumped in over here was wet when I put it here. It's still wet yet here today, and you're gonna notice that it doesn't smooth everything out nearly as nicely as it does with dry soil. So I ended up with something here that I can plant into that. But while when the soil is dry, this breaks up the clods and stuff really nicely. In this area over here where it's wet, it just clearly doesn't do quite as good of a job. You can hear the engine fighting there a little bit too. This thing is 26 horsepower. It's a capable little machine. But when it's doing work like this, when you bury that thing in the ground, you can find the limits of its horsepower. As I go back and forth here, I'm just continuing to watch for the high spots and using it almost like a box blade, right? Dragging the soil to where I want it to try to get a little bit smoother finish. But again, if this was dry, it would work down into the soil so much more nicely. So in front of me here is another good example of the places I need to rework here. So this is a cap for the stormwater management pit that's over here. All this is settled out a lot. And so I got this really low spot over here now. So it's gotten chunky, it's not smooth. I had to dig this up with a backhoe at one point to trim the pipe off, whatever. So we're gonna fire this guy up. And I'm gonna run it here and forward. See there my high spot how the drum was a little bit more aggressive and took a little bit more of the soil off and then just drags it down the slope. This is definitely one of those things where, you know, I have a comfort level on equipment, but can have a real respect for people who do this stuff day in, day out. This is definitely one of those implements that you have the potential to be really good at and be a bit of an artist with it, right? Where somebody like me, you know, I know how this stuff runs. I can get out and be dangerous with it. A pro would be able to do some amazing work with this that has a learning curve to it. I do think it's appropriate that anybody could jump on here and do what I'm doing today and be able to be efficient and get a job done. But no doubt, a guy who's a really good operator would be able to do some amazing work with this thing really quickly. So that's a little bit of my time out here with a Harley Rake. Definitely a really cool attachment. A little bit of a learning curve. You know, I'm learning two machines here at almost one time, but really does a lot of work very, very quickly and gives me a very good finish that I can walk away and be proud of. I started out here with a rake and didn't take too long until I thought, yeah, I can make a YouTube video about this thing. So that's where a lot of these videos come from, right? Me getting stuff done around home. So if you're shopping for an implement we can help, or you have parts or service needs for a machine you've already got, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at Messick's.com. Look at that huge piece of quartz. I dumped a little bit of soil down here at the tractor, and I'm going to use the